Hi, you guys. Welcome back to my podcast, Stepmoms Without Children. You guys already know who's on this episode because you saw it in the title. We're excited. We're excited for my mom. This is a story time. This is like, I guess the very, 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 very beginning of my origin story always starts with your parents. And so my parents have a fun love story and even just, an origin story because my mom is an immigrant and immigrated here when she was younger. I hope you love it. Also, things that I hope that you're subscribed and following me on whatever platform you're listening to me in, to my new Canadian, UK, and Italian listeners. Hello. Oh, and my Romanian listener. Hello. Love you. Thank you for being here. To everybody who started listening on Castbox. Hi. I see you. Thank you for coming. Stay tuned after this episode for Cuddle Time with Matt, my husband. We'll, decode this episode and point out all the mistakes and talk about all of the things that we thought about this episode. Love you, mean it. Please enjoy, Liz.
Oh, I was like, how come there's no timer on?
It says recording started right now.
Because I just pressed the button.
Oh my God. All right.
You guys, we just had a whole podcast for the last, I want to say 20 minutes. And it was never recorded.
Yeah, 20 minutes. I got down, about 20, yeah.
I'm so stupid.
Well,
so we're going to give you the fast version of what we just did.
Rehearsal.
Yeah. We had podcast practice.
Yeah.
That was a scrimmage. This is real. I was like, where's the timer?
Well, you can just do your own little update.
We're going to just fast forward what we just talked about, friends. Okay, guys, so this is my mom.
Hello.
I know it looks like twins, but Ricky's the one with the curly hair and Miranda Priestley hair is my mom. So we're giving a life story of my mom because we love an origin. I mentioned that her origin story is the beginning of mine. And so my mom is from Portugal. She migrated? That's not the word. Immigrated. She immigrated from... She flew here from the north. She immigrated from the Azores. Right. She immigrated from the Azores in 1973 when she was 7 years old. She came to Cambridge, Massachusetts, which was a very Portuguese town. So it was not a difficult transition into America because it's the same folks that was back home. They just got there too.
Right.
Right. And then she was in school. She learned English after like a year or something in school. And that was really awesome. They moved to Fresno, California to be with my grandma's family, which didn't work out because cows stink. They came back and moved to the Merrimack Valley, which is where all the Portuguese people are at. Eventually my grandpa's family came, and so my mom had like her cousins and stuff, and that was like fun enough. And eventually my grandma's sister, one of her sisters, came, and that was fun enough too. And we're in high school. We have a best friend. Shout out one more time to Wafa. Also, this whole time, my mom is being a mom to her siblings.
Yeah.
A whole mom. And so she mentioned something about truancy officers saying, I'm sorry, just where's your daughter though? She hasn't been in school for 3 months. And the answer was, well, she's taking care of these kids.
Can you imagine that happening in 2024?
They would take all of the kids away. Every single one of them.
Right.
I'm dead. I'm so mad that I wasn't recording because there was
I am too, because we had some fun stuff on there.
Okay.
Okay. We'll keep it moving.
We'll keep it moving. This will just be more about life after instead of life before. That's fine.
It's probably more interesting too.
Right. And so her origin story of being a mom to her siblings because her parents were working and learning English and being in a new country is a very familiar story to a lot of our listeners because a lot of our listeners are our family and they're all Portuguese and moved here from Portugal too. My mom is the toughest man that we all know because she's kind of like a firstborn daughter. And I don't know what side of the internet you guys are on, but on my side of the internet, they're saying that firstborn daughters had it rough. And so while she does have an older sister who is lovely, she moved away before they even came to America and the other siblings were born. So
Right.
that's why we say firstborn daughter, because she's the oldest.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to not include her because she's definitely
Right.
a very important part of my life today. We're very
100%.
good friends. We
Yeah.
talk every week,
And shout out to her kids because
Shout out
I'm
to-
pretty
yeah.
sure they listen to our podcast.
I hope so. They better be listening.
I think they are.
So
Jeffrey,
I will
Emily.
check.
Okay.
I'm gonna check.
We have listeners in France. My oldest aunt lives in France, guys, and we do have listeners in France. It says like 1% of our listeners. So it might be Kevin, and if it is, hi Kevin.
That might be Kevin. Hi, Kevin and
Hi,
Jeff.
Kevin. Hi, Kevin and Jeff. Right.
And Caesar.
Yes. So something else, we were talking about how my grandma had my youngest aunt on my mom's side at 40, and then just like to put it in there, on my dad's side, my youngest aunt was also born when my other grandma was 40, and so we're thinking maybe there's still hope for me yet, listener.
Yes.
We could have a little baby Ricky in the next 4 years if my genetics is geneticking.
Right. We can hope.
Okay.
We can hold out hope till 41, and then that's it.
Okay, hold on to your hat, people. Hold your breath. Okay, that's when the foster application will reappear.
Yeah.
And so we're in high school. You had a shop. I feel like today's kids don't know what shop is. Not that I have any of today's kids listening.
Right. So my first shop was drafting.
Uh-huh. That's like to be an architect?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That was the goal and the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But it got hard. And I'm ashamed to say this out loud, but it got hard and I got scared.
Yeah.
And I got scared because as generous and as kind as my parents were, they were on a budget.
Yes.
They weren't going to help with college.
Right.
And they weren't going, not because they didn't want to, because
there was no money for that.
Right. They were raising 9 kids. They didn't. And my parents were of the belief that if you do for one, you have to do for all.
Right.
And so it was clear to me from high school days, from early high school days, that my parents totally supported education, but they expected that we would, work and be able to cover it ourselves with maybe some help.
Yeah.
But we had to, have a job and be able to support our career.
Yeah.
So.
And you were like, am I going to be building buildings?
Because probably not, because I won't be able to go to college. So I felt like I was getting into something that I wasn't going to be able to finish.
Right.
And so I moved over to, I don't know what they call it today. Back in the 80s, it was called
home ec.
It was called home ec, but the home ec department was broken down into, I believe it was 3 subcategories. So within the home ec, you had clothing designing, which I have some friends from high school who currently work in the fashion designing industry.
Oh, love to hear it.
And then we had the home health care, which is where I fell in.
Right.
Because
now they call it medical.
Okay. My second career choice was nursing.
Right.
And so I just felt like that was more realistic for me. And I switched to that department, and I liked it and I did well in it. And I actually worked in it through high school, because I don't know how they do it today, but back then in your junior and senior year, you actually took an official job.
Yeah.
and in your field.
Yeah.
And the school would help you find a job in your field so that you can do what we used to call
I know, I'm trying to think of what we called it too. I forget.
I'm drawing a blank, but it was where you went to school 1 week for your academics, and then you actually went to work.
Yeah. It's so for the listener that has no idea what we're talking about. My mom and I, we went to vocational high schools. And so on 1 week you did the vocation of your choice. Like she said, she did home medical.
Yes. I'm sorry, the word just came to me. It was a co-op job.
Yes. And so 1 week you do your regular academic, like a regular high school, and then 1 week you're off and you do your shop. And so the shop that she had was medical, and so she worked at a nursing home junior, senior year.
Yes.
For the personal side of this story, she met my dad in 10th grade. He was a junior with his little afro, and
I actually met him in freshman year.
Oh.
I was a freshman, and he
so maybe I was thinking him in 10th grade.
And he was in 10th grade. So I was a freshman, he was a sophomore. And we met through mutual friends because we did not go to the same junior high.
Right.
But I was friends with my
You were there in school with Wafa, switching your clothes and your makeup and meeting this man in school.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty much.
I'm dead.
And we were just really like cool friends, see each other daily and talk to each other. And it was very comfortable.
So back then, I always wonder this. So like they have pick-me girls now. And the pick-me girls of today are the same bitches of the pick-me girls back then, where you go and you're in the hallway with your little backpack and you're like, where's my hug? And are those pick-me girls, are they grandmas now? They still had them when you were in high school?
Oh, yeah.
Were you a pick-me girl? Hi, Izzy. Where's my hug?
I was not a pick-me girl. No, I was shy. Yeah. I was the shy one in the corner. You know, I was the wallflower. I was not part of the pick-me girls clique at all.
Right.
But that's okay. I mean, I'm not putting them down. It's just
I'm just trying to picture it. Like, was he like in the hallway and you were like, hey?
No, we were like introduced by a mutual friend. And matter of fact, the young man's name was Ricky, and Ricky knew him from the neighborhood. So Ricky knew me from going to the same school. And so one day, Ricky just introduced him as, hey, this is my friend, Izzy.
So what was your first date with Junior?
First date?
Hold on. Listener, my dad's name is Junior, and my mom always called him Hoon, and sometimes June. And so in my head, I call my dad June, and then Junior, Junie, like all of it just comes together. So,
right.
Anyway, you and Hoon.
But it's funny because those nicknames all came later in life. When I knew him as a high school girl, he was Izzy. Yeah. So our first date was a Friday the 13th. I don't know what number, whatever was out in 1980.
Oh, the movie. I was like, you remember the date, bitch? Oh my God.
The movie that came out back in like 80, I'm going to say 82 or 83.
Whatever one that was.
It had to be 82. No, it could have been 83. No, it couldn't have, because we got married in 84.
I was going to say.
So it had to be like 81, 82, whenever that came out. And then we went to see that. And of course, you know, it was a scary movie.
I'm so scared.
So this sounds so cliche and so silly. But you know how when you're watching a movie and a boy is trying to put his arm around the girl to make her feel protected? He pulled that move.
Are you scared? Oh.
He pulled that move, and it was so cute and so sweet and so cliche.
every high schooler
Every
ever.
high school, right? And so
Every high school movie date story is this story.
Exactly. And it was cute. And that was our first date.
Was it a group date or this is just y'all?
No, this was me. Okay.
Hold on. If it was just regardless of if
it was just us.
Regardless of who was there, what lie did you tell your parents so that you could go?
I was just going to say, I pretended to be at work.
Okay. Which is around the corner from where you lived in the movie South Lawrence. So
yeah.
It's a lie.
It's a lie.
You're in a different zip code.
Right? I know. But I got brave. And because I was always so scared. So for the listeners, if who are not Portuguese, because if you're Portuguese, you already know that in the 70s and 80s and probably early 90s, little teenage girls were not going out with their boyfriends without a chaperone.
Right. I mean, listen, the American people can be strict too. But we know.
I just never met a family who was going out with the chaperone. Matter of fact, my high school friends thought my parents were crazy.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was Debbie's chaperone. I was like, this doesn't feel like I'm doing
I know. But so for just, for people to understand the culture, it's all cultural stuff. Right. And so, in our culture, we just didn't date. It just wasn't a thing. It was more or less my parents still believed in the early 80s, still believed in arranged marriages.
Right.
And so I would never tell my parents when I was going to meet a boy. Not that I did it often, and actually never did besides your dad, besides Izzy. He was the one boy that I would lie to my parents about. And I would say I was going to work, or I went shopping after work, because for anybody who knows the Merrimack Valley, I worked at Barcelo's on, is that Swan Street or Jackson Street? And so it's, for the people who know us, I worked there for years. And there was a Zayre directly across the street, what is now some kind of discount store.
There's a Big Lots.
Okay. So it used to be a Zayre, and I used to buy all my clothing in there. So I'd get paid on Friday and go to Zayre and spend my paycheck on my little polo shirts and
with your collar popping.
Yes, with my collar.
You're buying hairspray.
Yes. So anyway,
with the big dots.
Yeah. You remember all the pictures.
I'm thinking of your senior photo.
Yeah. So, it wasn't uncommon for me to go to Zayre on a Friday night. So
when really you was at Tenney Street and the movies.
Or at Wendy's or at Burger King.
That salad bar at Wendy's.
Yeah. I mean, we were getting our little dates in.
Yeah.
Definitely getting our little dates in. And then fast forward to 1983. And Izzy invited me to his junior prom. And we went. And my sister Lilia from France was visiting during that time.
Girl.
And she was my accomplice.
Oh.
To sneak me in and out of the house.
Love to hear it. Older sister came in, paid her dues.
Yep. And I got home 5 minutes before my dad was supposed to get home from work.
Look at God.
And, well, no, it was all planned out, because Lilia was like, I'm going to help you do this, but don't you dare come in later than Dad, because then, you'll all get in trouble.
Right.
So I was careful, and I showed up 5 minutes before his regular arrival time, and I literally jumped in my bed and put the
your big ass poofy
with my prom gown on and just laid in bed and pretended to sleep, because I knew that he was gonna open the door to check.
Why did she got so much blush on? Why her cheeks is red?
So I just lay there, my eyes closed. He would just open the door real quick and like peek in, and That was it. Like, he just wanted to make sure you were in bed. And then I heard him close the door, and I was like, I can breathe.
Oh my God, man.
And then I proceeded to get up and get out of my clothes, and then Lilia snuck in my room.
With a cold cream to take off all the makeup?
To just ask me how everything was and have that girly moment, you know. And yeah, so that's a great memory of
we're thankful. Older sister finally pulled up at the right time.
Right? Yeah, so that was good. And so the story behind that story is that that was the night that we decided that we wanted to be exclusive.
Oh, you want to go steady?
Yeah, we decided to go steady. Yeah.
So
okay, so he had been wanting this to go steady.
Be my girlfriend.
For a couple of years, right? All through our high school time together. But I explained to him why. And
you're not Portuguese.
Right. And I made that very clear. Like, this is going to be harder. You have no idea what you're getting into.
Right.
And he said to me one day, he said, well, let me just meet your parents. Like, once they meet me, they'll like me. He was so confident that once they meet me, they'll like me and it'll be okay.
I mean, kind of, but not really.
I mean, in the end, that's exactly what happened, but we all know, and I don't know how much you want to divulge.
Well, so this is the part that the question that I wanted to ask. When you met him and you knew, like, of course you want to date this man, but like, you know that you can't, is part of the equation because he's Hispanic and brown skin?
Absolutely.
Like, that was your first thing?
Absolutely. There was nothing else holding me back. He was a wonderful young man, and I felt like he was everything I wanted in, you know, a boyfriend. I don't want to use adult words because I was 16, 17 years old. I was 15, 16, 17. And he was everything I wanted in this boy. He was safe. He was loving. He was gentle. He was caring. He was everything that a 15, 16, 17-year-old girl wants.
Well, now 58-year-old woman wants also. So the real deal, ladies.
So the real deal. I mean, I like to remind myself that nobody is perfect, but we are imperfectly matched. We're imperfect people who are perfectly matched.
Yeah.
You know, he gets me and all my quirks, and I obviously get him and all of his.
So when you were telling Lilia, who was, you know, off and married and lived in Paris, when you were telling her, were you like, girl, it's this prom with this brown man? And she was like, huh? Or she was like,
what do we got to do to get you there?
Love it.
Yeah.
We love inclusion.
Oh, she was absolutely like, okay, so what do we have to do? What do you have to, like, what are you wearing?
She wasn't like concerned.
Like, she didn't get the whole prom thing. She'd never been through it.
Right.
So she didn't really understand it all. But when I told her I had to wear this fancy dress and makeup and hair, and she was like, oh man, like, it's got to be that hard? You can't just like go out. You can't just like wear a nice dress. And I was like, no. But once she knew what she needed to do, we just did it. She just like helped make it happen. And I had a dress because I had been in somebody's wedding as a bridesmaid.
Is that the purple dress?
That's the purple dress, yeah.
That's funny. Whose wedding was it?
You wouldn't know her. You'd never met her. But she was, but if just to make an association, she was, you know, my cousin Lidwina, not Lee, but Lidwina, the older cousin, not Lee.
Her sister-in-law, her auntie.
Her aunt.
Yeah.
Kevin's mom.
Yeah.
Kevin and Jason.
Yeah.
Her mom. She had a niece.
Random.
Yeah, she has a niece. Well, she has a whole family.
Well, no, it's random that you were in her wedding, no?
No, because growing up in Lawrence, in the house next to Tia Maria's house, we celebrated all the holidays together. So Lidwina and José Albert were the original owners of Tia Maria's house. And they used the basement, that beautiful finished basement. That was the party place.
Gotcha.
So all the Thanksgiving, all the Christmas, all the New Year's parties.
Easter.
I don't know about Easter. I think Easter was held in Maria's house.
Religious.
But the rest of the parties were definitely in the basement. There was probably 100 people in the house, all the families, all sides, her side, his side, friends.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful memories, wonderful experiences. We all grew up together. This woman is, probably a couple of years older than me, but I still see her from time to time. Her name is Lucia, but you wouldn't know her.
So you're dating this brown man and you're sneaking around and you're going to prom and you're getting accomplices. Did anybody else know that you had a boyfriend besides your sister?
Yes. Matter of fact, my cousin Maria from Cambridge, Maria, Dina, and Nellie.
Yeah.
Well, Maria knew because Maria was one of my closest friends at that point in my life.
That's cute.
Yeah. And so she knew. And Tia Serafina.
Yes, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, Maria's mom. She was one of the first adults.
Yeah.
That I told.
Oh.
Yeah.
Listen, don't underestimate an auntie.
Yeah.
Aunties have all the secrets.
Tia Serafina was wonderful. She was a wonderful aunt, and she never betrayed my confidence. She gave me the typical auntie advice of being safe and being careful and being smart and making sure that I get to know him really well and but other than that, she held on to that secret until I was able to tell my parents myself.
I mean, by tell your parents yourself, you mean get caught.
Yeah, exactly. That's
until all of your carefulness blew up in your face because it takes one mistake, honey.
Yeah,
and you made that mistake.
And it did happen. And you know what? I'm glad it happened.
Of course.
Because I just needed a reason or an excuse to.
Yeah. What is it? Sometimes your hand needs to be forced.
Yeah.
And so, listener, this bitch told her daddy that she was at work. And he said, let me see. Let me see.
The real story is that I actually had a real injury.
Right.
I had pulled some muscle lifting a patient. And I was wearing one of those, what are they called? Like a sling. And when I reported it to, my supervisor, the nursing supervisor, whatever, they checked me out and suggested that I take a few days off to let my arm heal.
Right.
And so one day I have plans with Izzy and we're going to go to, if anybody knows anything about the Semana Hispana in Lawrence, Massachusetts, back in the 80s.
Find out.
Poppin'. So we had plans to go to Semana Hispana, right? And so I get up and I'm like getting ready for work, and my uniform was old school, white dress, white stockings, white shoes.
Not white, everything to go to Semana Hispana.
Right? No. So this is how I'm leaving the house.
Right. Oh, okay.
I got a bag.
I forgot.
A change.
You've been changing your clothes since 7th grade with Wafa.
So I got a bag with a change of clothes, but I'm getting ready to leave the house. Oh, Dad, I'm going to work. He's sitting at the kitchen table having a cigarette, drinking his coffee, just chilling.
No windows open. That's how it was back then.
And I come in and I'm getting ready and I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm like, oh, mom's not here. Dad's easy. He's not even going to question me because he's my
Okay.
pal.
Right.
My daddy, my pal. He's going to say, okay, honey, love you.
Bye. Have a nice day at work.
And I come out and I'm getting ready to go. And I'm like, okay, pie, get the log. And he's like, where you going? And I'm thinking, don't you see me dressed in my work uniform, right?
The fuck?
So I said, going to work. And he said, what do you mean you're going to work? You got your arm in a sling. How are you going to work with your arm in a sling?
Oh, all of a sudden, someone wants to be caring and concerned parent.
And I said, oh, it's okay. They have me do stuff. They have me on light duty. I was trying to explain light duty.
Right.
So the truth is I was on light duty.
Not on that day.
Just not on that day. Light duty back then meant I could feed the patients, I could pass out trays, I could do anything that didn't involve.
Yeah, you weren't like changing sheets and dressings.
Right. I was doing like light duty work.
Right.
And I said to him I was on light duty. And he was like, no. Now he wants to give me a lesson in this company is taking advantage of you. You are hurt. They have to pay you to stay home until you're better.
All of a sudden, the HR department came out.
Right? And
Fuck.
I'm thinking to myself,
motherfucker,
how do you know all this shit?
Okay, who taught you about human rights?
Right? I was totally blown away. I didn't expect them to know all that.
Right.
So I said, no, it's okay, Dad. It's okay. I'm just going to go feed the patients. He said, no, that's not right. You're not supposed to be working. You're supposed to be resting. And they have to pay you to be out of work and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like,
oh my God.
No, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. I don't mind.
What in the workman's comp?
And he said, let's go. I'm going to drive you to work. Let's go. And I'm going to go inside and I'm going to talk to your boss.
Oh, my boss who doesn't speak Portuguese. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to risk him embarrassing me and himself and my boss.
Right. So
I broke down and I told him the truth. And I said, okay, Dad, I'm not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go meet some friends.
Mm-hmm.
And he said,
just like that?
He said, why are you dressed up like that? And I said, because I know you're not going to let me go. And I really wanted to go. And this is the only way I could think of.
Right.
And he was just very upset and very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he just put his head down like,
this lying ass bitch.
Right. Like he was hurt.
Right. Disappointed.
Yeah, he was disappointed. And then he said, well, who are these friends that I can't know about?
Oh.
And I said, he's a boy. My friend is a boy. And he said, okay, so why don't I know this boy? And I said, because I only know him from school and you wouldn't know him.
Right.
And he said, well, I want to meet him.
Mm.
And I said, I'm scared. I started crying. And he said, why are you crying? And I said, because I'm scared that when you meet him, you're not going to let me see him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why? I know you're a big girl now. I know that it's normal for you to meet a nice boy and get married. Get married.
And I'm like, listener, we're junior year in high school.
I'm like, wait, married? Like
married who?
Like I like him, but not that much.
Okay.
So then I said, Dad, I don't want to get married. I'm in high school. It's not about getting married. I'm still in high school, and I'm supposed to go to college because we had already talked about, I'll go to college to become a nurse.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to go to college. I'm not going to get married. And he said, when you bring a boyfriend into this house, it will be because you want to marry him.
Why do you think I didn't bring him to this house?
And I said, I know.
So this is basically, if you love him so much, why don't you marry him?
Right, exactly. And I said, Dad, I understand our culture. I get it. But I'm not ready to do that.
Because you're a junior in high school.
Right. I'm 17 years old.
Right.
And he said, well, if you're not ready to bring him home and do it, our cultural way, then you might as well forget ever seeing him again. Outside of school, he said, outside of school. And then he proceeded to make arrangements to make sure that I would never see him again outside of school.
This MF.
So driving me to and from work, even though I could walk, it was a 5-minute walk from my house to Barcelos. Just if I needed to go cash my check at the bank that was across the street from Barcelos.
In the same parking lot as
in
Barcelos?
The same parking lot, I'll take you to cash your check.
Out here making sure Dad's not a bank teller.
So yeah, it became very
no more shopping trips at Zayre's on Fridays.
It became very, very strict and very like suffocating. And he began to question everything I did or said.
Are you
working? I'm working till 9. He would show up at 8:30.
He said, no problem, girl.
Yeah. Just questioning everything.
Out here rearranging his own work schedule around yours.
Yeah. And so one day, finally, this wasn't a long time in between. This was this was going on. And then I was like, this is too much.
This sucks.
Yeah. Like this sucks. And the idea of getting married became more enticing.
Right. So hold on. So Semana Hipana is like usually Father's Day weekend. So June.
Right.
So we're in summer, like school's ended. You're working all summer. This man is up your ass, driving you to and from every place you need to be.
Right.
And then school starts back up again. And you're like, can you please get away from me?
Yeah. Basically break down everything that had happened. Break down that I am now under like surveillance. Like this man is on my back 24/7 and it's suffocating. And it's awful.
And so I feel like it's important to bring out like the month that this is happening. So now we're at senior year.
Yes.
And Dad's graduated. He just graduated in June.
Yep.
Right before Semana Hipana, where he was trying to go on a little dating date with his girlfriend.
Right.
He probably didn't see you very much that whole summer after he graduated.
No.
You start your senior year in high school.
You know what he would do? He would go to Barcelos and buy a chocolate bar.
I was wondering. I was like, he didn't like hang around the cash register sign?
He would go and buy something. And if I had a 10-minute break coming up, I would take it when I saw him walk in, like that. But that was like a once a week on like the weekend, like on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon. Because he didn't have his own car. He'd be borrowing his mom's car to drive from where he was living to
Good thing she just had a baby. I'm sure she wasn't going very many places.
Right. So he did use her car a lot.
So now it's senior year. I imagine it's late August, early September. You're 17 years old. No, you're 18 years old. In April.
I'm 18. Yeah, I'm 18. He graduated a year ahead of me. So he's working full time. I'm still in school. We are seeing each other as much as we can.
Right.
I finally broke down to my dad and said, I want you to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Izzy and I talked.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him to be absolutely sure that he wanted to meet the parents, because meeting the parents means you are committing to this long-term relationship that's going to involve a chaperone, and broke down the cultural norms.
Yeah.
And before you go meet him, you have to be willing to accept that these are the expectations.
At any point, did you tell Grandpa, did you tell Vavu that he was Hispanic?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just like, I didn't mention that? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. He knew the day I got caught in the lie.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Who is these friends you're meeting?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, it's a boy."
Right.
And who is this boy? And why don't I know him? Because he wanted to know if it was one of the Portuguese boys,
right?
Like the Andrades.
Yeah.
The the Andrades, like Dorette.
Yeah.
She has cousins or in-laws.
Is it Betinho?
The Betinho, the Andrade boys. There was a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And so he wants to know if it was one of them. And I was like, "No, you don't know him." And he's like, "Well, how do you know I don't know him?" And I said, "Because he's Puerto Rican." And he was like, "Oh." He wasn't that harsh about it. Like, he was processing. And he asked like follow-up questions like, well, what do his parents do? And where do they live? And I remember saying his dad worked at Malden Mills.
Okay.
So that was, yeah. So he was like, "Oh.
What department is he?"
I don't know.
Right.
But yes. So there was all these follow-up questions.
Yeah. He worked at the same place. He wanted to know if he knew him.
Right. And also, I think he was gauging, like, what kind of family are you getting involved with? Are they a working family? Are they a non-working family? And, what you have to remember, too, as we talk about this, because it sounds a little bit like, or a lot, if we're going to be brutally honest.
Okay.
Like racism.
Yeah.
And there was some.
Yeah, it was the 70s. It was the 80s.
There was some of that. But I want to explain, because it's really important to me, that people understand that for immigrants, for most immigrants, they believe in the staying with your own culture.
Right.
They want their kids to practice their own culture. And so when you separate cultures or you go into different cultures, you lose your own.
Yeah.
You tend to lose your own.
Yeah.
And I think
Asian people are the same. Middle Eastern people are the same. Like Jewish people are the same. Like like people want to stay in the culture. Even Black people are the same. And then white people, I mean, they get the label of if they're doing another culture, like, oh, that's the girl that dates Black guys. Oh, that's the girl that dates Spanish. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
I feel like a little bit feel bad for white people because they get the whole racism label while everybody else is like, no, it's just culturally appropriate.
Right. And so racism is a very complicated word.
Right.
In 2024. We have this whole cancel culture. Cancel the Portuguese because they're racists.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, Portuguese people did a lot of things to ruin a lot of things. So
that's
a different podcast.
Yeah, that might be a different podcast. But I think the important thing for me is to point out that my dad, and I'm a daddy's girl, so it's hard to talk about him in what could be perceived as a negative.
Yeah. I mean, it's all history and it's all like irrelevant now because we are all moved on.
Absolutely. But there are people who may be like, and I just want to say that I now know at 58 years old, I didn't know it as a 17-year-old, but as a 30-something, as a 40-something, as a 50-something-year-old woman, I know that my dad loved me very, very much and wanted the absolute best for me. And all his follow-up questions and all his concerns and all his extra protective, movements were to protect me and to make sure that I wasn't falling into a bad situation. And not because I think he had a racist bone in his body, just because, again, going back to the culture, it was all about, what will the neighbors say? What will our friends and family say? What will they think? And, well, if you marry someone who's not of your culture, what religion will you practice? How will you raise your children? Will they speak Portuguese? Will they eat Portuguese food? Will they be able to communicate with us? Are they going to become more Hispanic? Are they going to speak Spanish before they speak Portuguese?
Oh my God, yeah, all these petty little back and forth.
All these like superficial things.
Right.
But I will say that once they met, they liked each other very much.
Right.
Grandpa or Vavu basically realized that this was a nice young man and that he wasn't going to pursue this extra overprotective behavior. I did have a chaperone. Her name was Debbie.
Your baby sister. She was like 10.
No, she was 8. She was like 7, 8 years old, and she was chaperoning. So we couldn't go out for ice cream without her. We couldn't go for a car ride without her. We couldn't go to the reservoir without her. If anybody knows the Lawrence Reservoir, used to be a huge like picnic area. People would go walk the track. They would just hang out. They would play in the grass. It was like, the place to go hang out. And so Debbie became like our little shadow.
So you guys got married?
Yeah.
November of your senior year in high school?
Yes. Crazy.
So if anyone just needs a little like nudge at what I'm pointing at, you start your senior year in high school in September. And then 3 months later, you're throwing a wedding.
Yeah.
And then you have like 6 months left of high school.
Yep. And I finished it.
And you're going to high school and you're going home to be a wife to your man.
And it was weird as hell.
Oh, because you're going to school.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
So like, let's try to think of 17-year-olds. Let's Nyla and Alina.
No, you have to remember that in 1984, 17-year-olds were really mature.
They were adults.
They were adults. They were real adults. Like they had, especially the ones that went to vocational jobs, I feel, because who went to a vocational school. Sorry, my brain's going faster than my mouth. I think because we were already in the workforce.
Right.
We were already making money. Being in the workforce is a big part of adulting, right? And I think because of that, it made us feel more like adults.
Right.
And again, let's not forget the cultural part.
Right.
I had been raising my siblings. He wasn't raising his siblings, but he was very responsible.
Right.
At least for himself.
Right.
Because
kind of man of the house vibe sometimes.
Yes. Yes. That, and my parents can't do for me, so I have to do for myself.
Right.
Whether that meant a new wardrobe.
Right.
A new car.
It was a different time all around in that, like, a lot of people had big families and had to help out, and you couldn't just come home and turn on the TV. Like, not even everybody had a TV. So it's like people had big families to help their family, to have more hands and more bodies to help.
Right. And he had 7 sisters.
Right.
And so he was, as you said, kind of, helping mom and dad and just being adulting, just adulting, just, doing his thing. And he was ready to settle down after high school. And again, believe it. And then we keep saying culture, 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 but it really is, because once a young man finishes high school, he's either going to go to the army or go to college.
Right.
Those are the two choices.
Right.
He actually considered going into the Navy. He was working with a recruiter to go into the Navy. I'm not sure the details of why it didn't work out, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. And then, you know, we were dating, and he knew that my parents had these marriage expectations. And so one day he was just like, you know, I'm done with school. You're almost done. It's what your parents want anyway. It would just be so much easier if we could just get married and not live this chaperone.
Oh, how romantic.
Right? But that was just a conversation. It
wasn't like the engagement. That wasn't your betrothal.
Oh, no, absolutely not. That was just conversation. Like, how would you feel about it? It was kind of like the framework for what's the next step.
Am I going to spend my coins on a ring, or should I buy something else?
So after that conversation, he was saving his coins for a ring, because then I ended up getting an engagement ring while at dinner and Merrimack Valley people will know, the Oriental Garden in Haverhill.
Okay,
that used to be across the street from the movie theater that's in
Chunky's?
Haverhill. I think that's what it is now. That's not what
Eastgate
it was.
Plaza area?
Right off the highway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's an Orient. It's still there. The restaurant's still there.
Is it like a nightclub sometimes? Or
I don't know.
Oh no, I'm thinking of one that's in Andover. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
I love that. Can we go back when we go all together?
I went back in 2019, which was Matt's wedding, your cousin Matt. During that trip, we went there just for old time's sake, because
that's so
went
cute.
to a wedding, so I think we were feeling the whole, you know.
Oh my God, bring me to a wedding, and I'm like, hold on, because let's be romantic and nostalgic.
So we went back and we had drinks at the same place.
That's cute.
Yeah, and that was, I believe it was 2019, and it was still there, and it still looked the same, and it was like, Jesus, can you clean this place up? It's been like this for 40 years.
Okay. And so we're going to wrap this up, but I do wonder if do you have advice? So there's like a little Middle Eastern girl, Portuguese girl, Hispanic girl, African girl, whoever, or boy. And they're in a very similar situation that you were in, where you couldn't have friends and you were afraid to have friends outside of your culture, let alone outside of your race, and your parents don't really get it, and they're stuck. Like, what advice do you have for these people, for these kids that want to have a life outside of their parents' expectations?
I think it's perfectly okay to want to have a life outside of your parents' expectations. I think it's important to explore all of your
desires
and dreams and desires. I think it's important to explore all of that. That's my thoughts on that. But you said advice. So my advice would be to do it responsibly. Don't jump into anything head first.
Right.
You know, because it can have adverse effects.
Yeah.
You can fall into the wrong lifestyle or the wrong path.
Yeah, things are much more dangerous nowadays than they are in 1981, 82.
Yes, absolutely. Things are much more dangerous. So for that reason, I would say follow your heart, but do it responsibly.
Right.
Don't disregard everything your parents are telling you, because your parents do have your best interest at heart.
Right.
They do care about you.
That's where your moral compass will come from.
Right. They do care. They do want you to do well. They do want you to fulfill your dreams. They're just scared for you.
Right.
They're nervous that you're going to make a mistake. They're nervous that you're going to get hurt. They're nervous that you're going to fall down, you're going to fall into the inappropriate.
Right.
So take what they're saying with a grain of salt. Give it some consideration.
Yeah.
Be smart about it. But follow your dreams.
Yeah. Cute. That's nice.
I feel like I've always had, even with you kids,
right,
I've always felt that you should all follow your dreams.
Yeah.
I was never one to say, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. Or maybe I said it in that overprotective mode. But I think deep down in my heart, I've always wanted and still to this day feel that it's very important for everyone, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, follow your dreams.
Yeah.
You only live once.
YOLO.
And if you don't do that, you're never going to understand true joy in life.
Don't be scared.
Yeah, don't be scared, but don't be crazy either.
Don't be crazy.
So that's the mom side.
Okay.
Don't be crazy.
Okay.
But then the human side is
explore.
Follow your dreams, explore, go on adventures, live your life, have memories, build memories. Like just live it up. Like really.
Safely live it up.
Safely live it up. Responsibly live it up.
Yeah.
Like why not?
Well, that's the end. Thank you for joining me.
Memories are flooding.
I know.
Right now.
Mill said the same thing on hers. Mill said the same thing on hers. She was like, hold on, I haven't even thought of these things in so many years.
Right?
But thank you so much. Thank you, listener, for joining us. Bye, Mom.
Bye, sis. Bye, listeners.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome to Cuddle Time. You want to hold my hand?
I sure do.
Okay. So, did you ever know my mom's story of how she met Junior?
Well, through the years, I've heard like bits and pieces, and I've always kind of looked at it like the great American love story.
Oh.
You know what I mean? They really like the high school sweethearts, and now we're, that was back in the early 80s, and now we're here 2024, and they're married, had 3 kids, seem very happy.
November.
Comfortable.
40 years they've been married.
Their needs are met, and most of their wants are satiated. And I've always kind of thought that it is it's the realization of the American dream. Europeans came to this country from all over. Everybody came to this country to give their kids a better life, so they had more opportunity. And then, Liz and her brothers and sisters are all beneficiaries of that action.
Yeah. Thanks, Grandpa.
1983, and this love story, I feel, could have taken place in 1933.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Very, very old school. Not old school the way that people say old school. It's even older than that.
So it kind of reminds me of the Von Trapp family, where the oldest daughter used to have to run off to meet Rolf. I mean, the rest of the story, like, he was a Nazi and it was terrible, but that's...
Oh, my.
Yeah. You never saw The Sound of Music?
Never.
We have to fix that.
Really?
It's a classic. So it's a tale as old as time.
Beauty and the Beast.
No.
Oh.
But, coming to America and then, breaking away from the traditional expectations.
I'm laughing at something completely.
I was wondering what I was saying that was so...
You said coming to America.
And you started thinking about Eddie Murphy?
Yes. Fuck you, too! But Yeah, no, I see what you mean.
And like your mom took a beat and addressed that, it's a different time and the racism aspect of it, which, I mean, I feel like she did a great job of explaining that. We don't have to delve more into that. But, the misogyny was just kind of part of the story.
Listen, the patriarchy's been patriarching since the dawn of time. Speaking of a tale as old as time, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, people listen to their dads. People, like, obey their parent. Like, that's how it was. She didn't think that she was allowed to think for herself. It was 1984. It was the 80s. It was such a different time. Like, even the difference between the 80s and even the 90s, like, women have been oppressed for a really long time. Like, they've been less oppressed
in the United States.
They've been less oppressed, or they've been oppressed less than they haven't been. You know what I mean? We're still fighting uphill for it.
If you really look at it, like her two choices were that she was either forced to live under martial law, where her father followed her around, or marry this kid. Like, those were her options. Where was she going to meet somebody else with her dad following her around?
Well, I mean, that's the point. If you find someone in the church that dad knows. Oh,
so it was more of an arranged. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Her choice would be arranged marriage. Would be the third choice. Yeah. But somebody that her father approved of.
In theory.
No, I understand. It's in theory, but it's also
probably right.
Putting yourself in her shoes and looking around at your situation. Those were your options.
Yeah.
I've talked about this, but the way my father talks about daughters, and it just seems kind of like, that was the goal, was to marry off your daughter.
Yeah, get rid of her.
Yeah. And that.
But with my mom's family, like, that's not. Like, I know that you're saying that's what your dad is like, and that's 100%.
But that's what it reminded. Like, that's what
my grandfather was very much about a family. And my grandma, like, they were still about a family. She talked about, being in her, like, cousin's niece's or her cousin's wedding. Like, family was still a big deal, and so I don't think that if she found someone in the church that she would have been,
it didn't seem
off.
Like, I think what I'm trying to say is that, like, it didn't seem like her future was that much of a priority to anybody.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like, if keep her home from school so she can take care of the rest of the kids. Let's get all right. Well, she's older now, so she wants to go.
Like, on top of it being the 70s and the early 80s, they came from an old country that still had villages when they moved. That still have villages now. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
And so it's just an old, super old school, like original school way of thinking. I guess it's not original school because there's not like dowries and stuff. Anyone who's younger listening to this might think like all of this sounds crazy, and maybe they don't even think it sounds romantic. I think it's romantic because they persevered and it was true love, and that's why they're still married. So
I mean, that's what romance.
Lucky.
Let me explain to you. That's exactly what romance is. It's disturbing. It has, you know what I mean? Like, you hear stories of, like, how did you meet grandma? Well, I met her and then I just followed her around for 3 weeks till she gave in. That's.
I mean, this is way more romantic.
It is
something like that.
It is way more romantic than something like that. But It's still like I'm not putting any of this on your father. This type of thing. Courting used to be very creepy.
Yeah, you're comparing something way more old school that is vaguely related to this.
The significance of, yes, like, your mother's story is ultimately your origin story, but it's also the completion of her parents' story, just like you are the completion of her story.
Is me not having to choose between hanging out with a boy that I like and being true to my parents, did they break a generational trauma of being married off?
Very well could be.
Look at Mom, you did it. So I did love this episode. I mentioned in the intro that, like, I didn't know, because obviously, like, you have, a platform and you want to, bring everybody with you. And so, the podcast being about family dynamics or peculiar family dynamics, and and step parenting, that made it kind of difficult to have my mom on. But I knew that it would be a special thing for her to tell her story. I did think that this episode was going to be more about me. Like, I planned that face. I did plan for origin story vibes, and it just, like, dug much deeper. Even the part that got deleted, like, I thought it was going to be about, like, having biracial kids and what it was like to be in a biracial relationship and those type of things. And maybe it'll come. Maybe there's going to be a part 2.
I feel like there could be a part 2. I mean, you had a part 2 for me.
Yeah. But I'm happy that it wasn't about me and that it was about my mom, because it's such a fun story. Yes, there is trauma deep into the details of this story, but it's a very happy ending because you have me and my brothers, and you have this love that has lasted for 40 years.
It's incredible.
Longer than that, because they were in love before they got married, I imagine.
I mean, it's truly a testament to
the best.
To true love.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more you can say.
Honestly.
I mean, I'd like to get your dad's point of view on it.
100%. I thought the same thing. Like, after when we ended, I was like, does Dad remember any of these details? Because he doesn't.
More than likely not.
Remember details.
No, more than likely not. If you were to ask me a bunch of details, I don't know if I'd be able to.
Well, I hate that for me.
Oh, I remember all your details.
It's thanks, Fred.
Other details.
So what else is happening? Last week we mentioned about your dad being in the hospital.
Yeah.
Fast forward, you spent a couple days there.
3 nights.
Back home.
Yeah.
Being a caretaker.
Yeah.
That was difficult. A lot of personalities in the house.
Brought out a lot of my childhood trauma defense mechanisms.
Right.
Apologizing all the time, just being almost frantic, making sure that I'm there when I'm needed.
I didn't know. They told me stories of what you're describing, but I didn't know that was part of your childhood trauma.
The being there and being attentive was usually when they were screaming at me and trying to understand what they needed me to do. Mm-hmm. But they weren't screaming at me.
Right.
It was an internal screaming at me.
You were trying to do a really good job.
Yeah.
Making dinners.
I just, like making dinners and making something he's going to eat. And then he's on a low salt diet and stuff he's going to eat, stuff he's going to enjoy eating.
Right.
Making sure he doesn't fall.
Right.
Making sure I don't drop him, making sure I don't hurt him as I'm moving him in and out of bed or whatever it is I got to try to help him do.
Right.
Scooch up the bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've never been a caretaker before.
No, I've actively avoided it. Literally. It's just
present day. It's been a week since I think we've had this conversation. And he's back in the hospital.
Today he went back. His blood pressure was real low. He was lethargic. My mother called me to let me know.
Yeah. So we gotta call her back and see. Try to get details. I mean, she's an older lady too. She's 88, so she doesn't always have the details that we're looking for.
Yeah, but that's not new. She really never had the details.
Be nice.
I'm being nice, but I'm not gonna lie to be nice. I'll be nice and I'll be honest. I'll be as nice as I can be.
All right. All right.
Listen, I've spent 3 days there.
You're allowed to be cranky.
I am cranky. I am.
You spent 3 days there 3 days ago.
I'm still recuperating.
Right.
Like my back is still, just a nightmare. Mm-hmm. But, and I would have, look, don't get me wrong. I would have stayed if I'd have thought I was needed.
Yeah, it seemed like everything was fine. There wasn't any things happening at night, which is why you were asked to go.
And my mother was a basket case at the time. And I think what it was is just having somebody there in case something happened.
Right. Wait, do you feel guilty that you weren't there and something happened?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I mean, it's not your fault.
I know, but still.
But I mean, I don't know if it would have been any different.
Right.
Or I'm liable to argue on his side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to go to the hospital, I'm going to argue for not going to the hospital.
Well, that's not very helpful.
Well, that's what he wants. You know?
Yeah.
Like somebody's got to advocate for him.
Right.
So, I don't know if it would have been any different or if I'd have just watched the ambulance take him away.
Yeah.
You know?
Probably be in the ambulance, I feel.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It wasn't an emergency.
It wasn't.
Like when he goes to the hospital, he travels by ambulance.
Right. Maybe he wasn't eating. That's my answer to everything. I'm like, well, did he eat? Maybe that's why. But it's also like, girl, it's not always going to be, did he eat? Like, am I like the mom from every show that's like, honey, eat. You'll feel better after you eat.
Well, it's also like, he's on this low salt diet, and I've been making sure he's been getting Metroprolol at 7 o'clock every day.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's only a half a pill, but I'm just saying, like, we're talking about low blood pressure. Give him some salt.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? We're
Right.
cutting back his salt because I thought he had high blood pressure.
Yeah.
If it's low, let him eat some corned beef hash.
Give him a chip.
You know? Well, I think he'd rather have corned beef hash, to be honest with you.
Honestly. Come back next week, you guys. We have a kind of similar story happening next week. Yeah, so that's a fun.
I am intrigued.
I know.
Intrigued.
You better turn those notifications on so you know when it comes out.
You can also hear Ricky on the Media Virus podcast.
Oh, we never mentioned it. Yeah, guys, I'm on the Media Virus podcast on Wednesdays. If you want to watch live, it's on YouTube. If you want to watch after, it's on YouTube. I'm not on camera because this happens around bedtime. This is a 8:30 p.m. show.
Yeah, you're usually sans clothing.
Yeah, pajamaed up.
Yeah, or, not.
And so if you want to listen to the Media Virus podcast, they're on all of the same platforms that I am. You just have to search for the Media Virus podcast. TMVP.
That's right.
And then if you listen to it and you want to tell me about it, you can call 646-VIRUS-01 and leave a voicemail or be on air.
That's right.
Anyways, let's go make dinner.
I am hungry for chicken.
Heck yeah. Later,
All right.
dudes.
Bye.